Hello and welcome to the program, Sula's Big Adventures, with me, Sula. Today I'm going to be talking about the humble red dot finder. It's a finder for your telescope, and they're pretty cheap, and they don't project into the sky, they don't magnify, they just have a reflex that makes a red dot where you look through, and that helps you locate stars for star hopping. There are many different brands of red dot finders and a range of prices, and so I wanted to talk about all about the red dot finder. Which one should you get? Which one should you not get? Why should you get one? What can you do with one? And how do you use the red dot finder? So let's go get one out and I'll start telling you about the red dot finder. So why would you want a red dot finder when it doesn't project or magnify? Well, if you have a GoTo telescope, this is a computerized GoTo German equatorial mount, the Sirius EQG mount. And so really all you need a finder scope for this type of mount is just to find the alignment stars. So after you polar align, you have to find either 1, 2, or 3 stars. 3 stars is the most accurate. And so you need a finder scope to find those 3 stars. And the red dot finder is perfect for finding a star. So you would want one for a go-to motorized German equatorial mount to find your alignment stars. By the way, 4 days ago, it was -28 Fahrenheit, and today it's 42 degrees Fahrenheit. However, it is a bit chilly. Anyway, so I took out the 8x50 finder scope and put on this red dot finder on my GoTo telescope, and it works great to find the 3 alignment stars. But to make it work, you have to line it up first before you go out for an evening of stargazing. And to do that, you turn this button that turns the red dot on, and unless you got an extremely cheap red dot finder, this has brightness levels. And at the brightest, it's too bright unless you're in an extremely light polluted place, but here's a Bortle 3, so I usually have it on the lowest brightness. And during the day, you point it to a distant object, a mountaintop, a light pole, your neighbor's annoying outdoor light, and you get it in the telescope, and then the red dot finder has an adjustment here in the front and underneath at the back. And one of them makes it go up and down, and one of them makes it go left and right. And you move the red dot until your object, top of a mountain, is in there. I don't have an eyepiece on here. But you look through your eyepiece, and it helps to use an eyepiece with crosshairs. Get your object directly in the crosshairs, and when it's dead in the center of your red dot and dead in the center of your eyepiece, you're all lined up and ready to use your red dot finder. Now let's talk about another use of the red dot finder. This is my 10-inch Dobsonian, and Dobsonians are alt-as base. They just go left and right and up and down, so there's no polar alignment, there's no 3-star alignment, there's no alignment, but you do have to find everything. So I was just using this 9x50 finder scope that does magnify, but it's hard to find that first star with that type of finder scope, at least I found it was. So I put a dual bracket on mine, and I have a red dot finder and a magnifying finder scope. So the red dot finder helps me find a bright star or a planet to get started. And then if you're going to star hop, which is what you do with Dobsonians, you find your first star with the red dot finder, And then you can use the magnifying finder scope to nail down the exact object you want to look at. And I have found that to be very helpful because it's hard to find the first star with just a magnifying finder scope, which is one reason why you might prefer a red dot finder over a magnifying finder scope. So that is another reason to get a red dot finder to help you star hop. You may not want to solely rely on the red dot finder though, because it does not magnify. It's just a red dot and it doesn't even project it in the sky. You just see it in the reflex sight. And so for a faint deep sky object, you're not going to be able to see it. So you do need a magnifying finder scope to see the object. Actually, sometimes I can't even see it with this magnifying finder scope. But if you get close by star hopping, meaning you go to a bright star and then from there you go to something else fairly bright and you keep hopping until you get to the object that you want to look at. And when you get down to getting close to your object, if it's a faint object, it may not even be visible in your magnifying finder scope, and you certainly won't be able to see it in your red dot finder. So that is one reason why you might not want a red dot finder. Some people don't like them. I'm a big proponent of the red dot finder though. I've found that it helps me a lot. So another reason for the red dot finder is that it's small. So let's have a look at another one of my telescopes. This is my Meade 12-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope. It's on a fork mount, which is an alt-az mount also, so no polar alignment. It's computerized, and when you turn it on, you level it and point to true north or compass north, and then it asks you to center 2 alignment stars. It came with this nice 8x50 millimeter finder scope, but I was having a whale of a time finding the alignment stars because sometimes it can be pretty far off. It's my fault because I don't bother to level it because it's on this wheelie bar, but somebody suggested this Telrad, which I got, and the Telrad is great. A Telrad is similar to a red dot finder. It doesn't project, but instead of a red dot, it has 2 red concentric circles, and you get your object in the middle of the smaller concentric circle, and it works great, and I love it. And I never or hardly ever have to use this one, but it's big. So a red dot finder is much smaller than a Telrad, but they both work the same way, and they both work great. But this video is about red dot finders. But that is why I don't have it on here, because I've got my Telrad. Because as you can see, the telescope's enormous, so Telrad doesn't add anything to it. Okay, so let's look at another situation to use a red dot finder. This is a William Optics Red Cat 51 telescope, and even though the aperture is only 51 millimeters, almost the same as the finder scope on my Schmidt-Cassegrain, I still find it nice to have a finder scope to locate the alignment stars. I have it on a German equatorial mount that's computerized and goto. So I had to pay $50 for this bracket, which is outrageous, but that was the only way I could attach a finder scope. So I bought the bracket and I've put a William Optics red dot finder on the bracket to find the 3 alignment stars. And I find that very helpful. If you align with 3 alignment stars, your go-to is much more accurate than if you just use 1 alignment star. Although it's such a small telescope, you don't need to be that accurate. But the more accurate you are, the better your visual observing. This is not a visual telescope, and your astrophotography. So that's another situation where you'd want a red dot finder, I think. Another reason you might want a red dot finder is if you have a spotting scope. I don't own a spotting scope, but they're usually just on an alt-az or just on a tripod, and you can get a bracket and put a red dot finder, because it's very hard to find things at night on a spotting scope. They're mainly meant for terrestrial use. And so a red dot finder would help you if you want to use your spotting scope to look at planets or brighter deep sky objects. This is another go-to telescope. This is the Orion Star Seeker 4 go-to Maxitov Cassegrain, and it actually came with an Orion Easy Finder red dot finder scope. If you buy this exact finder scope from Orion's website, it's $35, and I do not recommend this finder scope. This one works, but after I got this telescope and it came with this red dot finder, I thought, oh, I'd like some more to put it on some other telescopes. And I bought 3 different Easy Finder finder scopes from Orion, and all 3 of them came with no red dot. And I had to send them back, all 3 of them. And then finally the 4th one had a red dot, but it was so cheaply made that I could not get it to line up with these 2 wheels that I was telling you about. It just would not line up. I think they were broken. It's plastic, which is okay. It's lightweight, and that's one of the selling points of it, but you do need to adjust it. It's no good if you don't take it out during the day and line it up with your eyepiece. You're not going to be able to use it. So I don't recommend the Orion Easy Finder. It's $35, which is a lot for a finder scope. You can get one that looks identical to this, but it doesn't say Orion Easy Finder on it. It doesn't have anything on it. You can buy it on Amazon for $17.99. It's extremely cheap, and I would not get that one either. I don't think it's going to work well. They don't make it well, and if you can't line it up, it's useless. So don't get the $17.99 one from Amazon. Another thing you can use your red dot finder for is to help you find the sun, but only if you have a solar filter for your telescope and a solar cover for your red dot finder. I'm going to use number 14 welder glass to hold it over my red dot finder, and in that way I can point the red dot to the sun and locate the sun with my red dot finder. You can use welder glass, number 14 only, or you can get those little covers, solar covers that you cut to specific sizes. They're made by Planetarium. I've never used one, but you could tape one over your red dot finder as long as it's completely covered, because you can't look at the sun to find the sun. And that's only if you have a solar filter for your telescope, but another use of the red dot finder with solar covering to help you find the sun for solar viewing. I was able to see several sunspots today by using this method. I said $35 is a lot for a finder scope, but what I should have said is $35 is a lot for a finder scope that doesn't have a red dot or you can't adjust it. This red dot finder is the best red dot finder you can get. It's expensive though, and I think it's really meant for guns, for a gun sight, but it works great. This one, made by William Optics, was $85, which is a lot, but it comes out of the box sometimes already lined up. Now the downside of it is that to adjust it and line it up, you have to use a hex wrench, which they give you, and you put it in these here to adjust the up and down or left and right. But it's very sturdy. It's made out of aluminum alloy, I think. And it comes with a little cover to keep your reflex sight clean. And it has a brightness changer, which is also the battery compartment. So you have to be careful you're not unloosening the battery compartment when you're trying to change the brightness level. Other than that, I think this is an excellent red dot finder, and it's not just a red dot finder. You can make it green if you want to, and you can make it a circle if you want to, or a star, or a bullseye. So the William Optics red dot finder, $85. Excellent red dot finder, but expensive. Another very good red dot finder is made by Planetarium. This is the Planetarium Sky Surfer. It was $52. Like most Planetarium products, very well made, and it also would function as a finder for the sun, which is hard to find when you want to look at the sun with your solar filter only. Unless you have a solar filter to go over your red dot finder. This one, you bend this down and then you can use it to reflect into the lower part so that you can find the sun, and also use it as a nighttime finder scope. $52, made by Planetarium. I haven't installed it yet, but I'm planning to. This one is one of those generic ones I was telling you about that you can get on Amazon. They don't say anything on them. They're just made in China. And this one does work, but often you get them and they don't work. And SV Boney makes one that looks identical, except I think it does say SV Boney on it. I don't know. I threw it away because it would not. It was so loose you couldn't adjust it either. The SV Boney was $18.99. Do not get the SV Boney, and they don't give you the battery either. At least Orion gave you the battery, even though it didn't have a red dot. So the generic one from Amazon, don't buy, $17.99. Don't buy the SV Boney for $18.99. Do buy the Planetarium Sky Surfer. If you can afford it, do get the William Optics. That is an excellent red dot finder. It's the best one I've ever seen. There is a knockoff made by Astromania that's significantly cheaper, $39.99. It looks identical to the William Optics, except it says Astromania on it. That one is pretty good. It's also actually for guns. It's a gun sight, but functions perfectly, equally well on your telescope. I found it a little bit harder to adjust it, and it also uses a hex wrench to adjust, which, you know, if you lose the hex wrench and you're out and you accidentally bump your red dot finder and it's not lined up, that would be a catastrophe. So that's a downside of it, but it's pretty solid, just like the William Optics one. I don't think it's going anywhere once you lock it down. So William Optics would be my #1 recommendation for a red dot finder. The advantage of using a red dot finder over a magnifying finder scope are that red dot finders are small, they're lightweight, they're generally cheap, although you can get expensive ones, and they're easy to use. The disadvantage is that you cannot use a red dot finder to find a deep sky object that you can't see. It's not going to be helpful in that situation. And in that situation, you would need a magnifying finder scope. But other than that, the red dot finder would be the preferred finder scope if your telescope didn't come with a finder scope. If your telescope came with a very cheap finder scope that's too small, like 6x30 or 5x30, that's too small. You're not going to be able to find things with that. And a red dot finder would be more helpful. I think it would be more useful for the beginner who's having trouble finding even that first star for star hopping. And even for go-to telescope mounts, the red dot finder is helpful to find the alignment stars. You could also get a dual bracket like I have and get a red dot finder to get you on the first star, and then a magnifying finder scope to hone in on that deep sky object. So those are the advantages and disadvantages of the red dot finder. And that's all I know about red dot finders. So that's it for now. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, get out there and enjoy the night sky. Dark skies forever. Sula, signing off.